Hey, I'm the Neuroneer, and in this video I'm going to talk about 6 reasons mood journaling is really good for your brain. I don't know about you guys, but often my emotions feel about as tameable as a unicorn after a bucket of coffee. So mood journaling is one of the ways that I've sort of managed to get a little bit more of a hold of them. In this video, I'm going to cover these 6 reasons that mood journaling works really well. And if by the end of the video you're interested in getting started with mood journaling, I've included a free 7-day mood journal challenge template in the description below, and you can also check out my other video on how to do a photographic mood journal. So the first reason we might keep a mood journal is to help reduce the intensity of really strong emotions. Negative emotions are obviously natural, but when you feel so anxious you can't function, or so angry you feel like your brain is going to overheat and dissolve like a bath bomb, it tends to get pretty uncomfortable. The reason you feel uncomfortable is because when you're experiencing strong emotions, an area of your brain called the amygdala is really active. And this essentially makes it pretty impossible to concentrate on anything other than how awful you feel. Actually, a heap of really cool studies have shown that emotional labeling, so just taking a minute to notice and label the precise emotion you're feeling, can actually decrease that activity in the amygdala. It does that by increasing activity in a different part of the brain called the ventrolateral prefrontal cortex. And what it does is decrease the intensity of the emotion that you're feeling, which makes it easier to calm down and think more clearly. So the second reason I might keep a mood journal is to develop an awareness of my emotions so that I can learn to manage them more effectively. Research shows that our emotions have a huge influence on our daily behaviors, our thought patterns, our perception of information, and the way that we interact with other people in a given moment as well. For instance, when I'm in a negative mood, you tend to get this kind of tunnel vision, and you pay attention to stimulus in the environment that's likely to signal threat and kind of pass over stimulus that would signal reward. Our emotions have such an incredible impact on our experience that they can actually influence the way food tastes and cause us to perceive height and color incorrectly. In terms of communication, they influence the way that we interpret what people are saying to us, and also the way that we tend to phrase our messages too. When we take a step back and really look at this, it kind of seems like our emotions are actually running the show a lot of the time. So I want to develop a sort of ongoing mindfulness about the way my emotions shift and change over time, and how they influence the way that I perceive and respond to my environment. So if I want to be the kind of person that understands my emotions and responds to them purposefully, as opposed to the kind of person who, is at the mercy of their emotion and reacts without thinking, then using a mood journal is a really good way to get started with emotional awareness and management. So the third reason it's really helpful to keep a mood journal is to start analyzing associations between environmental stimulus and emotions. So part of becoming the kind of person who I guess has command over their emotions, as opposed to being a kind of helpless slave to them, is having a decent understanding of the kind of stimuli in our external environments that tend to influence our moods, and in what way, because it differs a little bit for everybody. So actually almost anything in our internal or external environments can cause a shift in our mood, and you probably notice this. So it could be a Facebook post or a text, an advertisement you see, a particular person, place, time of day, a thought that you have, or perhaps you're feeling a bit of fatigue. So as we track our emotions over time, we can start to sort of notice patterns. So it might be that you tend to get really down at a particular time of day, or for you, feelings of relaxation and happiness tend to correspond with particular music types, or being outdoors, or doing physical activity or whatever. So another reason we'd keep a mood journal is to start to understand emotions as separate from self. When we experience emotions, and particularly really strong ones, it can start to feel as though the emotion is just part of who we are right now. Like we are that emotion. So we start to say things like, I am so angry, I'm so anxious, I just can't think. But if we take a step back and start to see emotions for what they really are, which is actually just temporary fluctuations in neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine in particular structures in the brain, then we can actually start to separate ourselves from the emotion. And there's kind of a subtle but important difference between someone who is angry versus someone who is a reasonable person who's affected by the emotion of anger right now. Seeing ourselves as inseparable from our emotions can also lead to feeling like the behavioral responses that flow on from those emotions are just natural and unavoidable. So for me, kind of eating myself into a pit of despair and donuts feels like a natural and unavoidable response to sadness. So I guess seeing myself as just a rational person who happens to be experiencing the effects of this physical change we call sadness right now empowers me to make a more purposeful decision about how I want to respond to this kind of messy and irritating intruder in my consciousness. So keeping a mood journal, particularly for me, a photographic mood journal, can help us start to frame emotions as things that are sort of external or separate to the self. Another great reason to keep a mood journal, at least for a little while, is to start recognizing that emotions do fluctuate. Sometimes when we're feeling really sad or anxious, it can kind of feel subconsciously like it's never going to change. I've always felt this sad and I'm always going to feel this sad. Negative emotions can also actually distort our perception of past and future. So we can start to downplay positive things that have happened in the past, or else the potential for positive things to happen again in the future. It actually distorts our predictions for other people as well. So when we're angry, we might see our partner as somebody who's always really annoying and inconsiderate, when perhaps that's not actually the case. Keeping a mood journal allows us to pick up on those fluctuations that happen throughout the day, the week, and the month. And we can start to see moods and emotions as impermanent and temporary. If I have a look at my mood journal here, I keep a photographic one, I can see just how often, even within one day, my emotions actually come and go and change. So number 6 is flagging long periods of negative mood. Our emotions and moods are supposed to fluctuate, but sometimes negative moods can seem to kind of take over and hang around for a lot longer than usual. Mood journals can be useful for a whole kind of host of reasons aside from trying to detect psychological illness, but they can be useful in picking up on this. So maybe you notice an unusually long and intense period of negative mood that hangs around for a few weeks, or perhaps you're getting some really intense and unmanageable ups and downs. It's just a signal that we might actually want to investigate this a little further. So you might want to make contact with a registered counselor or psychologist. So how to get started with mood journaling. If now you're curious about mood journaling and you want to get started, I've included a free template for a written mood journal in the description below. There's also a link to my video on how to do a photographic mood journal if you're interested in that. And if you made it this far and haven't had a terrible time, it'd be awesome if you could hit like, subscribe, or leave me a comment. No pressure though, it's not like I'm going to wait by the computer in childlike anticipation all night.